Welcome back to another edition of Global Book Network, the show where we sit down with authors and learn why and how they made things come together. And well, we were talking about this before we went live, but my guest today has lived so many different lives. But today we're talking about our mental health and our mental state. The book is called Foundation 7. Please welcome, can I say officially, Dr. Peter to the show. How's it going, sir?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine, man. I want to learn a lot today because I feel like you have the research already locked in. The fact you put it together in a way that's kind of accessible and digestible, I think we're gonna have a good discussion here today.
Hit me up.
Let's get right into it. Yeah, Foundation 7, off the heels of Bad People Bible. Well, how long was the downtime between the two books? Was it just kind of like one after the other? Did you
Let's
ever?
see. Uh, Bad People Bible came out about a month ago. Then this came out. Then I've got another book coming uh, that's about mindfulness. And then go someplace warm and sit on the beach or sell slushies.
Wait, how warm we're talking? Like the Caribbean, the equator, like what?
Uh, I'm going to Hawaii.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, Foundation 7, the idea of mental health and writing it, the space is pretty full. You walk down the self help aisle out of Barnes and Noble, and it can go on and ever. But what was the reason for you when you said there's something not like this? I have to be able to write from my perspective. What that moment was for you?
Yeah, this isn't really a self-help book. I mean, technically it is, but it's about mental health self-care.
Hmm.
We've got a whole generation of people right now that are in a mental health crisis. Um, they get their therapy by phone, by text, by, you know, by video. And I wanted to write a book that was the equivalent of like a personal trainer that people could learn. Like we learn about nutrition, we learn about working out, we learn about how to keep ourselves focused, but we don't learn how to manage our mental health.
Hmm.
And I get a whole bunch of young adults who they just crash. I mean, that's even their word for it. They wake up in the morning, they get overwhelmed, and they go back to bed. They don't go to work. They scroll all day. They play video games all day because they can't manage themselves. Everybody's triggered over something, and everyone is anxious and depressed. So, this is like, instead of personal training, this is like personal braining. And I lay out a whole schema for what to do when you're not feeling like you can cope. Uh, Therapy's great, but I think therapy tends to over pathologize people. And that's why the main theme of the book is you don't have to be sick to get better.
Hmm. A lot of things to unpack there, and I love the tagline. But let's talk about personal branding because I saw that and I went, interesting. I love how that is, but like a personal brainer slash trainer, I have to ask: can we start doing that ourselves? Do we have to enlist professionals, if not therapists, or is it kind of a thing like a mental mind state where we say, "Look, we're going to have something, we're going to work it out day and get better at it by concerted effort and actual training in that regard."
Well, I happen to think that the answer for most people is yes. Of course, there are times when you actually need real therapy and sometimes medicine, and that's fine, and I don't put it down. But this program, the technical word for it, it is a psychoeducational program. So you get better by educating yourself. And there is a community that's taxed to Foundation 7, which is on the internet, for people to go and have discussions about these things and also talk to me.
Mhm. So the community aspect, was that something that was decided up front, or that's something that kind of evolved after the book was written?
No, I'm very very big on communities, on internet communities for doing things instead of fighting what the trends are. I want to go with it, but I want to make it my own. I want to put together communities where people can talk about my content and also hop on and speak to me. I think that's the future of authoring, is to give your readers access to you and expand on the knowledge that I put in Foundation 7.
Well, that's kind of interesting. I know there's always that school of thought of being like we're too accessible as creatives sometimes, and everyone needs to know what we're thinking and what the rationale is. But you're saying lean into it and build a community around that.
Yeah, because you read a book, sometimes you have a question that's not answered in the book, and sometimes you want to get to know the author, and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
I like interacting with groups of people.
People have said that you are a straight shooter, of going by your previous interviews, and this book is pretty much direct. Was that by the design, or was that something you realized when you were going through these more complicated topics, simplifying for others, realized simple was better?
My beef with the younger generations it,
Oh no.
it is that they tend to shut down, and everything is triggering, and I really object to that concept. Uh, Not because I don't care about people, and not because I want people to be upset, but because when you're triggered by someone or something, it signals a loss of control. And I don't want people to go through that. I want people to counterbalance that, to counteract that. And the only way you could do that is by having knowledge of yourself.
And what does that look like? Knowledge of self in this particular time period.
So for Foundation 7, it's a platform. And it's a platform that asks you to examine 7 key aspects of yourself. And it brings you through a whole problem solving methodology that's actually built from some of the most modern types of psychology that there are: cognitive behavior therapy, and also uh, DBT.
Mm-hmm.
As well, CBT and DBT. DBT meaning dialectic behavior therapy, CBT meaning cognitive behavioral therapy. I was actually trained by the man who invented cognitive behavioral therapy, Dr. Albert Ellis. So I have a little bit of an inside line on what the thinking is. But the whole concept of Foundation 7 is you are your own scientist. And it's your job to use a method, not unlike the scientific method, but it's your job to use a method to deal with what's preventing you from coping.
Yeah.
And it's not a disease model like modern mental health. Modern mental health is you go into a therapist's office, you're sick, you get a diagnosis, and then it takes you 40 years to get better. My primary goal, my primary thesis, like I said before, you don't have to be sick to get better.
Right.
So I don't use a disease model. My model is a coping model. You you label yourself as anxious. You label yourself as depressed, and then you're a patient. I don't want patients. I want I want clients. I want people who are willing to explore what's going on inside them.
You had mentioned the 7 selves. Just for clarification, what are those for those of you watching right now?
Okay, the 7 selves, I can never remember the names of them because I'm old. Uh, Self awareness, self reliance, self soothing, self evaluation, self control, self preparedness, and self doubt. The last one is there as the last one because people don't have confidence that they can make themselves better, right? So the book talks about self doubt and how to overcome it, how to be more confident in directing your own destiny. One of the other big concepts in Foundation 7 is every person is the architect of their own destiny. Every person is in control of what happens to them. And that's why I don't like triggering, because the concept of being triggered is, like I said, loss of control. And I'm all about staying in the present, staying in control, and knowing where your next step is going to lead you.
Yeah. I hear that. A lot of times, the concerted efforts to look at self become so hard. I've done drills and I've done activities in the past with mental health and sometimes outside of the conventional areas of therapy. But the look inward can be so challenging if you're not a person to do that. You know what I mean? Like you and I just talked about this. I'm from a big city, and you don't really talk about the feelings. It's kind of like get the world done, get the things done. Have you come across patients or even clients that struggle with that, struggle with navigating the seven selves?
I hope they have trouble with it, because having trouble with something and having the motivation to resolve that trouble is what makes you evolve.
Yeah. No, I
You
hear
know,
you.
that's what, nothing in life comes easy. Nothing in life gets solved immediately. And I think that we currently live in a culture that prioritizes quick fixes. Everybody has ADD. So everybody needs medicine. Yeah, you might have a little bit of trouble paying attention, but true ADD is a very, very debilitating thing. So just because you have a little bit of difficulty staying in focus, everybody does, you're not sick. And you don't necessarily need medicine. But that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm sure the people who run all these places where you get therapy by text and therapy over the phone and therapy over Zoom, they're all doing very good business, because they count on being sick. They count on people being sick.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's an issue of in the mental health space of just rampant self-diagnosis, or is that just something I've personally noticed on social media? It seems.
Everybody's anxious or depressed, and I taught psychology for many years, and the interesting thing is, if you're anxious, you're depressed about being anxious, so you're anxious and depressed. If you're depressed, you're anxious about being depressed. So you can't even have one thing.
Mhm.
You've got to have both. And modern psychiatry tends to treat anxiety with both anxiety drugs and antidepressants. So, and it's true. And some people are doubly anxious. They're anxious, and then they hone in on their anxiety, and then they become anxious about being anxious, and they have all this secondary anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's no wonder why a lot of people feel, walking around feeling like they can't cope.
When you decided to research and pursue this career path, this knowledge path, what has been some things that surprised you the most about what we do or what we don't know about what mental health is in our community today?
Well, the main thing is that people become oblivious to the consequences of their behavior and choices. They don't think about what's going to happen after that. They don't think about what could possibly happen if I send this relative stranger a picture of my private parts. Am I allowed to say dick pic? Because I just said it. So they don't realize that there are consequences to these things.
Yeah.
So my whole thing is, hold up. Let's live in the present moment for a second. What am I going to do? What am I about to do? Where do I have this camera pointing, and why? And I think that, cell phones in general have ruined many lives, many relationships, many marriages, because people don't think about what they're doing with their phone. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other day who was about to go out with his girlfriend, and he texted his wife, "I'll be right there."
Oh man.
So there it is. You can't undo that. So
Yeah.
he had some explaining to do.
Right. I'm actually enthralled. What happened next?
What happened next is his wife had a major beef with him.
Oh, yeah, rightfully so.
And of course, yeah. And of course, that leads to more lying and on and on. And it just gets terrible. The main thing that I do, I know we've talked about a lot of things that I do, but the main thing that I do is I'm a forensic expert. I'm a forensic psychologist who helps the court figure out which parent should get custody of children in a high conflict divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So every single one of those cases is a trip. But in lots of those cases, people have made unrepairable errors because they don't think about the potential consequences of what they're doing. So that's a big one for me. To go back to your question is, what are the big insights I've gained over the course of my career? The second insight I've gained, which is a little bit more positive, is it always gets better.
Oh, okay.
No matter what happens in your life, it always gets better. Especially if you live a long enough life. I've definitely lived a long enough life to know that the bad things that have happened to me have always gotten better. You just have to stick with it. You have to persevere.
Yeah. Well, I used to say, maybe perhaps more cynically, that adulthood was just saying this too shall pass, with all good things come to an end until you die. But I like the way you do it. It sounds a lot more positive.
Well, I always say the reason why things get better and a mechanism for helping yourself get better. And I have a million like Peter principles. The reason why is because sometimes doing nothing is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And the next book that's coming out, the book on mindfulness, is all about taking a breath and watching how things happen. That breath gives you the ability to make better choices. So, as with everything, stop short, take a breath, let things unfold.
If someone wants to get their personal branding program in gear, what's the first step they can do, besides purchasing the book, of course? But what's the first thing they can do today to put themselves in the path to better mental health or better mental outlook?
Practice staying in the present. That's the biggest practice, because in the past, if you dwell on it, it creates anger and frustration. If you dwell on the future, all it creates is worry. The only place in life, I see my parts of myself disappearing. The only place in life that you can do anything is in the present. So if you're caught up in a loop of worrying, you're living in the future, and a future that may not even ever come to pass.
Mm-hmm.
That's the irrational thing about worry. You're worrying about something that may never happen. Now, you're young, and everybody else who's listening is probably young. Tom Petty is my favorite musician.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a line that says, most of the things I worry about never happen anyway.
That's a good point.
And that's a very powerful lesson.
Yeah. And it's a good advice to live by. And by the way, the kids love Tom Petty now because he was in the GTA 6 trailer.
Yeah.
Loves Winding Road. Yeah. Loves Long Road.
Well, I think that my generation and the music from my generation still has kind of lived on. I don't know where BTS is going to be in 30 years, but I know that people are still going to be listening to Zeppelin and Floyd.
Mm-hmm. Good point. I love this. I love the fact that you are not only committed to it, but you're not doing it from a dogmatic position, which could be something very dangerous for a lot of people who write in the mental health space. And a lot of times you sit down with somebody and it's like, get your head out of your butt and do 35 push-ups. And it's like, that doesn't really work for everybody. You know what I mean?
I have a funny saying about that. It's not my saying. It's just one that I remember. It's always, don't let your karma run over your dogma.
Oh, okay. Food for thought.
It's a very like I am not a very dogmatic person in general. I have my sayings, I have my things, I have my advice, but I'm all about, hey, let's do it your way.
Yeah,
And that usually gives you some pretty good answers, because when people do it their way, sometimes they mess up. But I'm
yeah,
very willing to, hold somebody's hand while they're messing up.
that's all you can ask for. We're talking about Foundation 7, which is available now, I believe, and I'm sure you were excited when it was released. Any feedback you've gotten off the rip when people have taken a chance to check it out?
Yeah, I mean it'll be on Amazon. Uh, I don't know if it'll do as well as my last book, which is really a book that everybody should buy all my books. I've written 21 of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
but the last book I wrote was called Bad People Bible, and it was all about how to not let bad people ruin your life,
Mm,
how to avoid toxic relationships. And it's a great book. It's the best book I've ever written, until the next book and the next book. And I always say I'm never going to write another book, and then I'm sitting at breakfast minding my own business, thinking about things, and then I say, I take my last bite of cereal and I'm like, hey, that I did make a good book. And then you know I suffer through yet another book. But reading one of my books is like having a conversation with me. It's very easygoing. It's very, very light. You could usually plow through it in a day. And they all come with journals.
mm.
And Foundation 7 has a journal. And Foundation 7 also has an AI coach.
Like a link that people can visit, or
Yeah, it's in the community, and you can click on the link and have an AI conversation uh, that will give you insights that come from the book. It's not
Mhm.
just being a make-believe psychologist. It's the expert knowledge in the AI system comes from the book, and it will help direct you to different places in the book and different concepts from the book.
Oh man,
Which
that's a good time.
it's all like my ideas. Like, what should a modern author do? Usually it's just, oh, he's got a website. No, I've got an AI program.
Take that.
Yeah.
Uh,
I always say artificial intelligence. There's a lot of that going around these days.
oh yeah, get in where you fit in. As a creative, I've seen so many AI jobs adjacent to the ones I do, so I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. Dr. Peter, man, just love the conversation talking to you about Foundation 7. But if someone, like you're saying, wants to connect with you or the community, where exactly should they go?
It's foundation7.co. And that will bring you to my online school, where I have a lot of cool things that people can learn from. A lot of the stuff is free. And the only downside for people who don't like, you know, giving their email address is you can't get into it unless you give your username and password. You have to make a profile.
Huh, small price to pay. you know?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on Global Network. Hopefully, the book does very, very well. And I hope to have you back soon on book number 22, 35.